to you AB 1460. The CSU educates the most ethnically diverse student body in the nation, and that diversity should be celebrated by institutionalizing a curriculum that is relevant, inclusive, and reflective of the student cultures and backgrounds they serve. 50 years ago, the CSU became the birthplace of modern ethnic studies, and almost all of its campuses already maintain some level of ethnic studies on them. Ethnic studies scholarship focuses on the central role that race and ethnicity play in the construction of American history, culture, and society. Ethnic studies fills in the knowledge gap and correct intentional misrepresentation of people of color and their histories, contributions, and experiences. Studies have found that both students of color and white students benefit academically and socially from taking ethnic studies courses. Ethnic studies courses contribute to improved graduation rates, positive campus climate outcomes, and are vital to a student's success beyond college in an increasingly diverse workforce and society. In 2014, the California State University Chancellor's Office launched a task force on the advancement of ethnic studies, comprised of faculty, department chairs, program directors, coordinators, deans, academic senate chairs, and presidents throughout the CSU system. In 2016, the #1 recommendation of that task force, that final report, was to make ethnic studies a general education requirement throughout the CSU system. AB 1460 codifies the #1 recommendation of the CSU task force report. AB 1460 would have the CSU take up the torch to systematically live up to its mission, which is to prepare students for an international multicultural society, by including the completion of an ethnic studies course as a graduation requirement. AB 1460 in Section 2C and D directs the Academic Senate to work with the CSU Council on Ethnic Studies to develop and approve core competencies to be achieved by students taking an ethnic studies course. This means faculty would be in charge of and would determine what courses count toward this requirement and not the legislature. This bill is structured in a way that the ethnic studies requirement must be implemented within the existing number of units required to graduate from the university. Therefore, time to degree is not impeded on it either. In addition, an ethnic studies course could easily double count for multiple requirements, and if a student took an ethnic studies course at a community college, the requirement would be fulfilled. This bill does not prescribe curriculum, course content, or student learning outcomes, nor does this bill limit faculty members or students' ability to engage in intellectual debate at all, and therefore does not infringe on academic freedom. It should also be noted that the CSU already has course requirements such as the American Institution requirement. The flexibility given in this bill allows for easy implementation for each individual campus. Different campuses have different ways of crediting cross-listed courses. As long as the course has the core competencies determined by faculty, then the requirement would be fulfilled. Lastly, AB 1460 builds on the introductory knowledge students will receive at the secondary college level, and it will most likely be CSU graduates teaching ethnic studies courses in the K-12 level. I want to emphasize the fact that this bill is supported by the California Faculty Association and supported by a multitude of campus departments, student organizations, civil rights organizations, and labor groups throughout the state of California. I want to also emphasize the fact that for 40 years, I founded and chaired and administered the Ethnic Studies Department, the Africana Studies Department at San Diego State University. Additionally, for 6 years, I was president of the National Council for Black Studies, the national organization of ethnic studies. And so I bring to you a wealth of experience and an understanding of how the university works and how it doesn't work, and the things that have to happen in order to move forward. With me today to speak on behalf of 1460 is Rocio Rivera Murillo, who's a recent CSU Northridge Chicano Studies graduate, and Kenneth Montero, the former dean of the college of the only college that we have of ethnic studies in the nation, but he is the former dean of the College of Ethnic Studies at San Francisco State University. I welcome him here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Weber. Welcome. You each have 2 minutes.
Good morning, Chair Leyva and Education Committee. My name is Rocio Rivera Murillo, and I graduated a couple weeks ago from California State University Northridge with a double major in sociology and Chicano Studies. 5 years ago, I was a high school student organizing to make ethnic studies an A through G requirement in LAUSD. 5 years later, students are fighting the same battle to pass AB 1460 and make ethnic studies a requirement across the 23 CSU campuses. Without ethnic studies, I would have not graduated with a research assistantship, provided the opportunity to publish in a peer-reviewed journal, presented at 5 national conferences, and organized alongside my community. I am one among thousands of students to testify about the ways that ethnic studies changed my life in positive ways that I never anticipated. In fall 2017 and fall 2018, for example, thousands of students mobilized, walked out, and boycotted against the implementation of Executive Orders 1100 and 1100R, mandated by CSU Chancellor Timoteo Blanco. In the wake of the 50th year anniversary of ethnic studies, students in the CSU find it even more compelling to make ethnic studies a requirement. Ethnic studies is a powerful and innovative interdisciplinary field that tackles issues ranging from immigration, environmental justice, incarceration, labor, gender rights, and sexuality in ways that traditional disciplines simply cannot. Under Title V mandate, the CSU is already legally mandated to teach American institutions, for example, constitutional issues. Title V does not meet the needs of students who come from historically disenfranchised backgrounds, low-income communities, and first generation. An ethnic studies requirement in the CSU will broaden the curriculum to empower faculty and students to make curriculum decisions that are innovative, groundbreaking, and transformative so that students can succeed in the CSU system. AB 1460 is needed to protect the right for ethnic studies to exist. In fall 2017, CSU President Diane Harrison promised to make ethnic studies a requirement across the CSU. Behind closed doors, administrators lie about their support for ethnic studies. However, administrators rarely take the risk of upholding the integrity that ethnic studies deserves. This is the only field of knowledge that was created by community members and activists. I respectfully ask all of you to please vote in favor of AB 1460 in the interest of educational equity, diversity, and California's future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Chaleva and committee members. I'm Professor Kenneth Montero, lead officer for over 200 members of the California State University Ethnic Studies Council, and chosen by the California Faculty Association to speak on their behalf as well. So I thank you for your time, hard work, and encourage your support for this potentially historic legislation. For brevity, I will highlight 2 themes. First, only a couple of select examples for, and second, select a couple of myths in opposition. Argument first, it is unthinkable that an educated person in the multi-ethnic, multicultural, globally connected 21st century only studies one intellectual and cultural tradition in a university. Ethnic studies provides that added value. 2, as mentioned earlier, so I'll go quickly on it, research demonstrates numerous additional values for ethnic studies, including an up to 20% increase in graduation rates for college students who succeed in at least one course, no matter their major. Yes, I said 20% increase, and any major, science, business. Myth 1. AB 1460 is described as unprecedented and violates principles of shared governance and academic freedom. Shared governance is bestowed by this august body, and the legislature judiciously already regulates general education and other graduation requirements as appropriate and necessary. Professors know academic freedom is not academic license. We are free to express how we teach within established professional parameters set by legislature. This bill simply requires that we offer this faculty-created curriculum with proven academic benefit to all, as recommended in the CSU Chancellor's Blue Ribbon Task Force several years ago. Myth 2, though customarily they would, administrative leadership did not consult the ethnic studies faculty before speaking on our behalf regarding academic freedom or shared governance, or on their recent curricular executive orders. And myth 3, as indicated by a joint letter submitted by Ethnic Studies and Women's Studies Department chairs jointly, refutes the claim that this bill would pit ethnic studies against our colleagues. To the contrary, they support it. So I encourage you to correct the decision 50 years ago when the governor, legislator, and CSU leadership secured their permanent place on the wrong side of history, and to take an important step towards inviting all parties to the correct side of history, shaping a better future for all. We appreciate your time on this.
Thank you very much. Witnesses in support.
Ashley Walker with Nossaman on behalf of the Monterey County Board of Supervisors in support.
Martha Zaragoza Diaz for the California Association for Bilingual Education, and we are in support.
Marta Escobar, Associate Professor in Chicano Studies at Cal State Northridge, first-generation student who graduated from college and went on to get a PhD because of ethnic studies, and strong support.
Mario Guerrero on behalf of the California Faculty Association and adjunct faculty at Sacramento State and the Political Science Department in support.
Kimberly Rosenberger with Service Employees International Union, California, in strong support.
Luisa Menchaca on behalf of the California League of United Latin American Citizens, a civil rights organization, in strong support.
Stephen Felling, faculty member, CSU Stanislaus, and advocate for academic freedom, in strong support.
Alejandro Contreras, social worker, Sac State alumni, in strong support.
Melissa Moreno, former CSU faculty and current chair of Community College Ethnic Studies program, and I strongly ask you to support this bill.
Mary Rove, professor of ethnic studies, CSU Stan State, in strong support on behalf of the entire ethnic studies department at CSU Stan State. And not only do I believe that this bill will not infringe upon academic freedom, but it will actually open up cross-departmental
Name and support only, please.
collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. If other witnesses in support, just your name and support of the bill, please.
All right, Lily Solorio, student at Sacramento City College and also organizer with the Still Here Collective, a transgender organizing collective. And I just want to say that I support ethnic studies to be passed because I want education from my perspective from—
Name and organization, and if you support the bill, please.
I support the bill.
Thank you. Next witness.
Dominique Williams, Sacramento City Unified School District. I graduated from the CSU and now teach ethnic studies, and I support this bill.
Jorge Pacheco Jr., trustee for the Oak Grove School District School Board, ethnic studies teacher as well. And on behalf of the Ethnic Studies Now Coalition, we strongly support this bill.
Christopher Sanchez, the chair of the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, and also as a student of ethnic studies at CSU Sac State, in strong support.
Richard Torres with California Dream Network, and support.
Manuel Barajas, profesor de Sociología at Sac State, chair for the Center on Race, Immigration, and Social Justice, in strong support of this bill. Thank you.
Kim Jerome, professor of political science at Cal State East Bay. On behalf of many of my colleagues, we strongly support this bill.
Dale Allender, College of Education, Sacramento State University, strong support.
Diana de Rueda, aspiring professor in ethnic studies and strong support. Please make my future happen.
Tiffany Chan on behalf of Southeast Asia Resource Action Center in strong support. Julissa Ruiz Ramirez, student at CSU Stanislaus, double majoring in ethnic studies and political science, co-chair of MECHA, and of our chapter and of our regional committee, in strong support.
Hi, I'm Dave Kolnick. I'm chair and a professor in the Department of Political Science and Public Administration at Cal State Stanislaus. I am also the chapter president of the California Faculty Association Faculty Rights Advocate, in strong support.
Hi, my name is Ann Strom. I'm the chair of the Department of Sociology, Gender Studies, and Gerontology, and I am representing an amazing group of human beings, and in support of my colleagues and my students, I stand here before you to support this bill. Thank you.
Good morning. Preston Rudy, sociology professor at San Jose State, graduate of UC Davis. Thank you.
Good morning, Jenneth Rodriguez, Sac State alum, in strong support.
Ilsa Mimas, political science student at Sacramento State, in strong support.
Margot Ronaldo, a political science student at Sacramento State, in strong support.
Dr. Reverend Joel Camacho, I'm here for the support. Bye.
Jessica Lawless, former community college gender studies professor whose courses were cross-listed with ethnic studies, and now with California Faculty Association, in strong support.
Jessica Wilson, Sacramento State graduate, in strong support.
Davika Best, Modesto Junior College, woman of color who wants to see herself reflected in her studies, and strong support.
Dimson McFadden from Stanislaus State, double major in ethnic studies and business, and I'm in strong support.
David Selby, Department of Political Science, CSU Sacramento. I'm in strong support.
Marlon Jones, Professor, Cal State Sacramento, strong support.
Rhonda Rios Kravitz, Dean Emerita from Sac City College, also alumna of CSUS and former faculty member of CSUS, and CEO of Alianza and Immigrant Rights Groups, and we are in strong support.
Elvia Olea, student at California State University Stanislaus, ethnic studies major, president of VISA Indigenous Students in Activism, and strong support. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Reverend Minister of Civil Rights and Human Rights. Strong support for this bill. Thank you.
Kim McGill from the Youth Justice Coalition. We also have a high school, Free LA High School, and strong support. It's one of the only reasons our students come to school.
Zaria Thomas with the Youth Justice Coalition and strong support.
Irving Alvarez, Youth Justice Coalition, Brothers, Sons, and Selves Coalition, and strong support.
Thank you. Are there any other witnesses in support? Seeing none, is there any opposition to the bill? Come on up. There's seats at the table. Two witnesses, 2 minutes each. Begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Catherine Nelson. I'm chair of the Academic Senate of the California State University. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. We respectfully oppose AB 1460. The Academic Senate CSU is the institutionally and legally recognized voice of the CSU faculty in matters of system-wide academic concern, including curriculum and graduation requirements. You've heard a very powerful case for the impact of ethnic studies on our students, a case with which we agree. However, we do not believe that a legislatively mandated graduation requirement is an appropriate means of accomplishing the ends embodied in the legislation. Faculty have the expertise and experience to judge the appropriate requirements for a university degree. Legislative involvement substitutes the government's agenda for that expertise as the basis for curricular decisions. The potential ripple effects of the bill deserve consideration as well. Given the CSU's 120-unit limit on undergraduate degrees, the additional 3-unit graduation requirement has the potential to alter major requirements, especially in high-unit majors, already pressed to meet accreditation and general education requirements simultaneously. In addition, the way the requirement is constructed poses potential challenges for the number of options students have for satisfying general education and cultural studies requirements and for double counting in majors and minors that involve courses from multiple ethnic studies departments. The start date of fall 2020 is also insufficient time to prepare for implementation. CSU community college articulation agreements, learning outcomes, course certification, and changes in academic programs all need to be thoroughly vetted through appropriate curricular review processes. And because the bill creates an unfunded mandate, reductions in other programs may be necessary to absorb the cost of implementation. This committee has a policy regarding bills relating to curriculum frameworks and model curricula that states that such measures should be introduced only after a member has tried unsuccessfully to use administrative routes to address the issue. A parallel exists in this case as well. Any proposal for system-wide graduation requirements should be vetted through established CSU shared governance processes. Our resolution, AS 3380, creates that alternative by providing just such a shared governance mechanism to recommend CSU ethnic studies curricula based on the Ethnic Studies Task Force report. We appreciate the increased flexibility in the bill resulting from clarification from Member Weber's office about which courses satisfy the requirement and the amendment that establishes a minimum 3-unit requirement. We also are very much aware of the history of racialization of the principles of academic freedom and faculty control of the curriculum. As much as we appreciate these developments, we remain opposed to the bill. The use of government power to mandate curriculum is quite frankly chilling, no matter how worthy the goal. If AB 1460 becomes law, it would set a precedent for future curricular mandates to be imposed by the legislature. So we urge you to seriously consider the long-term implications of the vote you are about to take. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good morning. I'm Lauren Blanchard. I serve as Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs for the California State University Chancellor's Office. Today, I join my colleague, Catherine Nelson, in opposing Assembly Bill 1460, which would impose the completion of a 3-unit ethnic studies course as a graduation requirement for all students. Let me be clear that our concerns rest not with the value derived in bringing greater awareness and understanding of the historical and contemporary experiences of ethnic groups in our country. We fully understand the ethnic and racial tensions and intolerance that have been and even today are still too pervasive in American societies. We also understand that the California State University is the birthplace of ethnic studies, first established at San Francisco State University in 1969. And as a result of the Ethnic Studies Task Force recommendation, a task force that was commissioned by Chancellor White 4 years ago, we have now seen first a 9% increase in enrollment in ethnic studies courses. The CSU has hired over 72 faculty members to tenure track in ethnic studies, and we now have 47% of our CSU graduates completing an ethnic studies course in one of the 4 course areas prescribed in the bill. Lastly, the CSU Chancellor White has made progress in making sure that the Ethnic Studies Task Force recommendations are being fulfilled and has made it a part of his annual evaluation process with the presidents. The CSU is the most ethnically, economically, and academically diverse student body in the United States. Part of the CSU's mission is to prepare students to live and to work in a culturally diverse society. And this mission is taken very seriously by the CSU. We strongly support ethnic studies courses and programs in the CSU. However, as was just mentioned by Dr. Nelson, this bill would represent an unprecedented, legislatively dictated curricular requirement. The California legislature has never imposed course requirements for California State University students before. The bill undermines the process of shared governance and academic freedom. Such a mandate will set the dangerous precedent of allowing government to determine curricular and threatens the academic freedom inherent in collegiate education. CSU faculty are hired for their disciplinary expertise. They should be relied on to develop curricula that are responsive to local communities.
You're out of time, so if you can wrap it up, please.
Secondly, this bill runs contrary to the work of the CSU, this is my last point, largely driven by the faculty to focus more on inclusive excellence and implement strategies there within to address equity and opportunity gaps of all underrepresented students, our disenfranchised students that we serve. So unlike the restrictive language of language in AB 1460, which limits us to 4 disciplines, our campuses really have included a more inclusive range of perspectives, including women's studies, gender studies, religious studies, LGBTQ studies, which this bill would then isolate those particular courses.
Thank you. Any other opposition to the bill? Sir?
Hi, Dave speaking. I'm still the proud parent of 3 women of color, beautiful women of color. I'm also 4 times the chair of the Academic Senate at Cal Poly Pomona, and I am currently chair of the Fiscal and Governmental Affairs Committee of the System-Wide Senate, the ASCSU, and I strongly oppose the bill.
Thank you, sir. Any other opposition? Seeing and hearing none, we'll come back to the committee. Senator Durazo.
Yes, thank you very much to the author. I am very proud of you, very proud as a woman of color that you are moving this forward and that you won't give up on it. I am very embarrassed that 45 years ago when I was in college, that I'm hearing similar explanations, similar excuses for not doing what the educational system of this state and this nation should have done. Words like however, not now, never before, threatens academic freedom, should do this, should do that. 45 years after I was in college. What an embarrassment. What an embarrassment. I expect a whole lot more from our educational system in this state. And to think that we are still, at our age, still fighting for the recognition of studies that shouldn't be seen as something that's segregated away from the rest of our education, but should be seen as something so integral, so healthy for everybody. I'm just so shocked. I never thought that at this point in my life that this would even be a conversation or a debate. And there are lots of excuses that are drummed up to keep out our part of history, our part of what all people do. It's quite a surprise to me. So I am a strong supporter, and I greatly appreciate your continued leadership, and I would expect nothing less than this for all the youth, all the students who attend our higher education institutions. Thank you. And I will be proud to move the bill.
Thank you, Senator Durazo. Senator Glazer.
Thank you. Dr. Weber, you are truly a trailblazer in this area. Your leadership, and I'm sure it began at the beginning of your professional life, because you haven't really deviated from that and all the things that you have done and led on and taught. And of course, we share some history together. I went to San Diego State, and it wasn't a requirement then, but I took an ethnic studies course in Mexican American studies. I briefly enrolled in Dr. Karenga's course until my workload got so great that I couldn't continue. And I took women's studies, and these were all choices that I got to make, and I was very much enriched by it, no doubt about it. I don't know if you were here during the earlier conversation on Assemblymember Medina's bill.
I heard it on television.
Very good. But then you know my sentiments about how important it is that we teach all of our citizens about each other and our backgrounds and our culture. That really is so important to our cohesion as a world, and there's just no doubt about that. The issue I have with your bill, as I had with his, is this issue of a mandate, and the requirement that we should get in the way of, in the case of the Medina bill, the Board of Education and the school boards. In the case of your bill, the academic senates on the campuses, and mandating a specific activity, even if it's one I think is very worthy of study and engagement. Now, according to the analysis, the Chancellor issued an executive order in 2017 that didn't mandate the course requirement, but it suggested it. And so I guess I'm interested in hearing where is it that, because I'm trying to establish this high bar that we need to step in. Can you speak to the work that the academic senates have done? Have they not even considered this issue? Have they turned it down? Have there not been campuses that have adopted this as a part of their campus choice? Could you speak to that issue?
Well, I think, if you look at it in terms of that recommendation, and that's not the first time it's ever been recommended. It's been recommended before from various other areas in terms of persons concerned and leadership areas. It has not been taken up as a statewide initiative. The recommendation has been there, but there is no plan in place that I know of where they have systematically decided how they would roll this out over a number of years. So the recommendation is there, but it has not been taken up to basically be implemented. Those departments who have, several of departments have contacted us who have taken that initiative and have tried to push it a little bit more on their campuses, have met resistance, of course. A few have been able to who already have in place a structure that allows that to happen, have been able to do something with it. But it has not become a major issue statewide that we can embrace and say, okay, they've taken the recommendation and they're moving forward with it. It's not there. And so, so you don't have a plan that's being laid out by the academic senates to implement this particular proposal.
So I know you're speaking about the statewide. I think you're speaking about the statewide academic senate. But I'm really interested in the campus-by-campus choice. So, in other words, I hear that
who've always done that, who've always had ethnic studies, or I should say a multicultural studies component, which is different than an ethnic studies component. At San Diego State, we had a multicultural requirement that was there, a cross-cultural, or whatever it was. And it could be satisfied in a multitude of ways that would never cause them to ever address the issues of people of color in California. You could take it by studying Southern Europeans or whatever you wanted that had some diversity component. But the ability to actually deal with the issues of race and ethnicity in California, in the United States, and the issue that it impacts their lives daily, that was not, you could get away, you could get out of the university without ever taking that subject matter. And that is one of the concerns, that if we're going to really address the issues that we face every day, that we see every day in our classrooms, in the places where we live, you have to begin to basically crack open that egg and begin to engage in that conversation, and not divert your interest in other areas and say, oh, we've satisfied it because we took a course in some other country somewhere else without actually touching the California or the United States issues.
Right, but my question really is trying to address the compelling need for us to act as a legislature, because, wait, just let me just finish.
Sure.
Because of an absence of actions on the campuses to show that sensitivity, and in some cases to adopt that as a requirement in general education, and that for me at least, it's like we have 23 campuses, we have shared governance on each, we have academic senates on each, and so for me to try to get to this higher bar and a precedent-setting bar, I'm trying to understand whether, since the 2017 executive order by the chancellor, have we had campuses that have done nothing and have actually refused to act and said that? It's on the record. They had a deliberative process. They said no. Have we had campuses that have said yes? And what are everybody in between? In other words, I'm looking for some factual basis to understand the need to act today.
The fact that you have 50 years of ethnic studies, and that 50 years is not 50 years of idle activity. You know, having been a chair of ethnic studies for almost 40 years, 30 of the 40 years I was there, there is persistent and consistent discussions of ethnic studies on those campuses, and inclusion of those courses in the regular, not only just in the regular curriculum, the content, but also the requirements to have students take those classes. That is a constant plea that is there on all the campuses, and it always has been. And after 50 years of that, when I came to the legislature, I authored the first piece of legislation that was a resolution concerning ethnic studies. And out of that resolution, we had a hearing up here. Out of the resolution, the chancellor then, who came in, white came in, and the Black Caucus and some other caucuses met with him and says, this is an issue that we have that needs to be addressed. So out of all of that, then you get this commission that serves for a couple of years, that's presidents and faculty members and you name it, all the collaborations that's there, and it comes out with a recommendation that says one of the #1 recommendations that there needs to be a 3-unit requirement of ethnic studies throughout the system. Now this is, as a result, this is my 7th year here. So this is a result of 7 years of discussion and ongoing, and we still don't have that. We have continuing conversation about what some departments have done, how they've taken, some have done that, but they had been doing that all along. So you don't have the introduction of this new statewide movement. So the issue is, yes, the urgency is there to the extent that how long, and hopefully as King says, not long, how long do you have to wait for this to happen? Is 50 years enough? Okay. You know, do we know enough information about ethnic studies to make a difference? You know, are we the people in this generation determined to make this happen? Is this legislature diverse enough to begin to see the necessity of it? And I say this because this is my battle for 50 years. I came to university in 1972 to develop ethnic studies at San Diego State. So I've been in this a long time, and I've heard all of these conversations. I have been a part of the Academic Senate for 6 years. I served as Academic Senate. I served as chair of the campus curriculum committee for the Senate for a number of years. I know the difficulty and the resistance that's there. I've been in the ivory tower and tried to paint it multiple colors, and it has not worked. So all I'm saying is that, what else do you need to know?
Well,
Standing in a situation where you are the birthplace of ethnic studies for 50 years, I mean, what else do we need to know? Tell me, and tell me how you would do it. And I know I'm not supposed to be questioning you, but that's okay, I'm sorry. But
Before you respond, Senator Glazer, if I can just ask the audience, when you like something, we go like this. If you don't like something, we just stay silent.
So
I love your passion, and I love your history, and certainly there's few that can speak to that understanding and history as someone like you, with all that you have done. The system has come in and said that since the 2017 executive order that there's been a 9% increase in the number of students taking ethnic studies, and they profess to say, and I don't know if you have information to the contrary, that they've hired 72 ethnic studies tenure track faculty, which is a significant number of faculty.
So they're ready now to implement the statewide initiative.
Yeah. So and I think that if you, I don't know if you can speak to the evidence that the course catalog has been shrunk in terms of ethnic studies, the majors have been eliminated, the departments have been eliminated. Anyway, I'm still trying to get to this issue of the compelling need, and I don't, and it isn't out of great appreciation for the goals that you have established, okay? And here's the last thing, and that if you want to address, you can, but look, there is an ebb and flow to our political system that is sometimes comfortable to observe because we obviously would like it to be where it is today, right? And in previous legislatures, there have been people in charge that haven't been like you or like me, and you don't have to go too far back. And so, there is a potential in the future, even though we wouldn't expect it or hope for it, that the folks that are up here at the dais are going to be folks with a different philosophical view about our campuses and academic freedom and the choices that maybe they want to make about mandates that they want to require. We have never provided this type of a mandate before. It is, in my worry, a slippery slope in terms of what would come next. Not because of a lack of merit, but because we have a process in place. We have a board of trustees, which is a very diverse board of trustees. We have campus leadership with great diversity now, unprecedented. More than half of our university presidents are women today at the CSU. We have a lot more work to do on diversity within our faculty, and I know that's an ongoing challenge. I was heartening to hear earlier in testimony that as a part of the presidential review, that this issue is a part of those standards. And I know I sat as a trustee during those reviews, and those things are taken very seriously in terms of the leadership of the campus in these types of areas. And so I just want to share that observation that as much as these are things we would like to have, I certainly would like to see it too, that there is a very slippery slope we get on with these types of mandates. And again, that's not out of any limit of the enormous respect I have for you and your leadership, and I thank you for indulging me.
You know, one of the, well, I don't know if you want me to respond to that or not.
We've got other questions, if you don't mind, Assembly Member. Thank you, Senator Glazer. Senator Pan.
Thank you so very much. And Senator, first of all, thank you for, we've had a chance to talk and appreciate your, thank you for the time and your leadership. I do agree with my good friend, Senator DeRosa, that this should be something, ideally, I mean, we know we are nowhere near the ideal, it's integrated together. The fact that it's not means that's why we need to have ethnic studies. So I guess the question I have, and I want to first pose it to CSU, and then I also want the sponsors to perhaps also respond. So what I see is that, we have a task force in 2014. I understand it's not the only task force. It comes out with a recommendation, and that was 3 years ago. And one of the recommendations is that we should do what this bill calls for, right? And I have to admit that I have the tremendous reluctance as someone who is a professor at the other institution, UC, to have curricula dictated by the legislature or outside bodies. I mean, faculty have to do a lot of work trying to figure out how do we educate. But so I guess the question I have for CSU, first of all, is that, so the report did recommend this. So it's been 3 years. So what has the Academic Senate done? Has it, and what I mean, what has the Academic Senate done is that in the past 3 years, you should have put it up for a discussion and a vote, and either you're telling me, yes, we agree, or no, we don't agree, not whether about, so we're arguing about the bill because, again, and you make the point, and I actually do share your concerns that we, as the legislature, should not, that we should let the faculty take the lead. But now the question I have is that, so have the faculty taken the lead? Like, it's been 3 years, what have you done? Have you actually debated this issue? Can you tell me that you voted it down? That's why it's not happened? Have you taken a vote on this? What has resulted? Why are you putting us in this position of having to debate this? So it's been 3 years since this report and the recommendation came out. So I want to know from the Faculty Senate, and I also want to know from the Chancellor, what has the Chancellor done to enact this particular, recognizing its shared governance? So that's why I'm asking both of you to answer the question.
Thank you for the question, and I appreciate the motivation behind it, believe me. At the time the report came out, one of the things that part of the dynamic of the statewide academic senate is a deference to campus autonomy when it comes to curricular decisions.
So I guess
so the answer is no, we did not take up the requirement. And I think that
so have you called on each of the campuses, since you said you deferred to the campuses, that each campus should have already had a vote on it in the past 3 years?
And we have called on campuses to seriously consider the recommendations of the ethnic studies.
No. Has it been
if you let me finish,
right.
But we have not specifically said take up this requirement.
Okay, so has it been agendized in every campus faculty senate to have a discussion about this report and the recommendations, including this recommendation?
That I do not have an answer to.
Okay, when can you get me the answer to that?
I can try to get it as soon as possible.
Okay, so
it's the summer, so I can't guarantee.
Okay, no, okay. So let me ask another question, and then I want to hear from the Chancellor's office. If it hasn't, is there a commitment on part of the Faculty Senate to take it up before the end of the year? That every campus should have at least had a discussion and made a public decision on what to do with this recommendation?
That is pretty much the embodiment of the resolution we passed in May, setting up a shared governance mechanism.
Is the answer yes?
Yes.
Okay, so before the end of this year, every campus faculty senate will have considered and taken a position on the recommendations report, including specifically the recommendation for requiring ethnic studies for graduation in their campus.
Two questions. One, are we talking about the 2019-2020 school year? Academic year?
I am talking about before the end of this calendar year.
This calendar year?
Okay, I know there's this academic year, but the Academic Senate can make decisions without waiting for an end of a school year. They can do it, we have 6 months.
I cannot
so it's not even July 1st yet.
I can give you a commitment that the statewide academic senate will take this issue up. I cannot give you a commitment that every individual campus senate will take this up and will have taken a position on it, because I don't have the authority to do that, and the statewide senate does not have the authority to do that.
Okay, and is that something so what has the Chancellor done, and is that something the Chancellor will call for?
So we do have information that lays out exactly how each campus has been and has not been responsive to each of them.
No. The question I asked is that taking up this very issue of the recommendations of the report and having the Senate, because I'd like to defer to the Senate, but if the Senate's not actually going to act on it and even debate it, then that's concerning to me. And it's been 3 years since the report came out.
The basis of my statement is saying that we already have some information that we can share with you relative to those campuses that have taken it up. And so what we will need to do is to make sure that we have a comprehensive base of information that says which campuses have and which have not taken up this particular item. And that if you're asking that we can provide information there on which have and which have not, we can certainly have that by the end of the calendar year.
Right. And information is great, but what I want to hear about leadership. So will the Chancellor, so I just heard, the statewide Senate will take something up, but says she doesn't have the authority to, although I hope the statewide Senate would call on each of the campuses to do this. I would also hope the Chancellor would commit to calling on each faculty senate at each campus to take up, to discuss, and make a decision, whether they support or oppose, let's put them on the record, the recommendations of this report that came out 3 years ago, that was done, I understand, at the Chancellor's behest, right? And so that I'd like to hear back from the Faculty Senate. Do they agree with the idea of what this bill calls for, as well as the rest of the report? Are we going to, recommend ethnic studies as a graduation requirement, as recommended by this task force? So, because right now what happens is that if they don't act, you're putting us in a bad position. Because I agree with you. I don't want to have to tell the Faculty Senate what to do, but the Faculty Senate's not even going to act. That puts us in a very awkward position. We've heard a lot of powerful testimony about how important ethnic studies is, how valuable it is, not only from the proponents, but from yourselves. And so I think this would be a matter of top importance, given the impact of ethnic studies, to the Faculty Senate. And the Chancellor, by the way. So where's the Chancellor on this?
Well, the Chancellor has been very responsive in terms of making sure that the campuses understand their responsibility.
All right. I'd like to see a little more leadership in that regard. What about calling on the Faculty Senate each of the Faculty Senates and the presidents of each to be sure that they actually take this up, agendize it, have a discussion, make a decision before the end of the year, so that hopefully the system could move forward? I mean, if the Faculty Senate comes out and says, well, these are all the reasons we don't think this is a good idea, let's put that on the record and let's have a discussion about that. Maybe there's something we can do to ameliorate those issues. But we certainly heard a lot of powerful testimony, and I heard that you don't disagree with that, about the value of ethnic studies. And so I'd like the faculty to take the lead, right? I'd like the faculty to take the lead instead of us having to do it. I mean, I agree with you. This is probably not a good idea that we're trying, that for the first time we're going to oppose. So I talked to Senator Weber and expressed those concerns as well. But I also have to admit that I hear her frustration. I hear the frustration of many of the people who have testified for the bill, that what's taking so long? And you know what? If there's a reason the Faculty Senate opposes, let's understand that. What's the reason for the opposition? Is there something we could do to ameliorate so we can solve the problem? Instead of waiting around, they said, well, we heard 50 years. This report came out 3 years ago. Can we have something done? Yeah.
So based on what you're saying, we'll go back to the Chancellor and make sure that the Chancellor has a conversation with each of the presidents as a part of the evaluation process that I just talked about, determine which ones have already taken this up as an issue and have that, and then ask the presidents to ensure that they're working in collaboration with their senates to get answers from the others as well.
Just answers. I'd like them to actually give us feedback, tell them what their position is on the recommendations and why. This is not just about information, this is about leadership, right? Let's confront the issue and deal with it, not just say, well, I'm going to collect some data about it. And I appreciate there's many campuses, actually, Sac State, I talked to the president. I understand there, but we have before us a recommendation. We have before us a bill that basically supports a recommendation that came from the CSU system itself, a task force, the CSU system itself, right? So in that sense, what happens is that, yeah, I don't like the idea of us imposing those requirements. At the same time, I have to admit that Assemblymember Weber isn't pulling this out of thin air. It's not just something that she wants to impose on CSU. She's basically saying, let's do what a task force CSU actually recommended. And so, that's not entirely unreasonable. Although, again, I have concerns that you've expressed and I share that we shouldn't be dictating. But at the same time, I need to know that CSU itself, they created a task force, they have a recommendation, is taking that recommendation seriously. And if they don't agree with it, then explain why not. And if they agree with it, do it. And that's what I'm not hearing. I'm hearing, where some people, et cetera, but this was a system-wide recommendation. So I'd like to see a system-wide response and recognize shared governance. Each campus has their own issues they have to deal with too, and their own characteristics. So, okay, fine. Let's have each campus. But if this is a priority, for, and I guess you're hearing from us, this is a priority for us, but again, we recognize, shared governance, so we hope that you make this a priority, and that's why I'm calling for her and saying, well, can you please make a decision and tell us what you've decided to do, campus by campus, recognizing some of the independence of each campus as well as the system before the end of the year, because guess what? Next year we have another legislative session, and I hope that you solve the problem for us so we don't have to legislate. What do you think?
So be it.
Okay, all right, and yes, please. Thank you.
Deal.
All right, and any, did you just,
I don't know if there are any other questions. Just let me say that this issue obviously has been circulating around for a number of years, and it should be apparent to this body that that body is not going to act in the way that we think is appropriate. I mean, as I said, I've been at the university for, feel like forever, and I've served on all of the committees that they talk about. And I know that there have often been mandates from outside that have impacted the campus. I remember when ROTC came to San Diego State. The faculty did not want it. The Academic Senate actually voted against it. But it was administration and the powers above that implemented ROTC at San Diego State. Despite all the discussions about our right to control curriculum and to decide what we're going to do, there are other things that happen at this institution that basically do not follow this really pristine analysis of faculty engagement and so forth and so on. And I guess the problem is I've been behind the curtain, and I know what's behind the curtain. So I'm not impressed when people tell me about the ivory tower, tell me about academic freedom, dialogue, the Senate committees, the da-da-da-da-da. I know that's all a way of saying it's not going to happen. When you look at ethnic studies came into existence not because people thought it was a good academic idea, not because they thought it was time, that it was fair. It was because students were burning buildings in the campus. I came to San Diego State because a bunch of students burned all the trash cans in front of the president's office. And he realized, oh, we got to hire some black people to get up in here to stop this stuff. And that's how I got hired. And that's why most folks got hired. San Francisco State was on protest for well over a year. Okay, every campus that you see was not some little orderly process that occurred. Students often were expelled from campuses. I have friends who could not finish their degree at Cal State LA and got it maybe 20 years later because they were expelled from the campus for protesting for ethnic studies. So this is not something that is going to easily walk through the ivory tower halls and be embraced. It is not going to happen. There are a lot of politics that occur when you start talking about requiring a course to be taught. You are then changing the perspective not only of the public but of the faculty as well in terms of what they see as important and what they value. That's going to change. It's also going to sometimes change the dynamics of power at an institution because students now will faculty will be required to see people who don't look like them, who can give them information that they don't have. It also changes the dynamics in terms of who's funded and who's not funded. So let's be real about it. This is power discussion. This is about who will have influence not only at the institution but who will have influence in California. The ivory tower somehow or another shrouds itself into this impartial perspective, but the reality is it is very partial. It is very concerned about economics. It is very concerned about maintaining the status quo. And we can either participate in that or we can change it. And so I'm not impressed at all with the conversation because I know what's going to happen next year and the year after and the year after if we continue down this path. At some point, everything we've ever done has violated the rules in order to get it done. Brown versus Board of Education talks about, are we going to intervene in states where they have states' rights to determine what's going to happen in schools? And we finally said, yes, we have to. And when we began to look at all the changes that have occurred in this nation, they have occurred because people decided enough is enough. We have to move forward. This is what we believe in, and we have to change the rules of engagement. And so when I look at the Academic Senate, having spent all of my life at the CSU, all of my academic life there, and working to change what is happening, I understand the language, I understand the buts and the however, because, maybe, so forth and so on, all the restrictions that are often put up to simply say we're not going to do this because we're not going to empower students to have the information. They need to be the kind of citizens that we want. We complain about all the hatred in California. We complain about the lack of information people have. We complain about students not being challenged to think differently and to form a California that is as very, very different. I see what happens to white students who take ethnic studies. Their lives are changed forever. Their perspectives are changed forever. And so we have to look at this not just as a black-brown thing, but we have to look at this as rescuing California. If we're ever going to talk about ethnic studies in K-12, it is because we have educated the teachers in the CSU to be able to do that, to be able to change that kind of narrative that's there, and to present the information that's so essential. This is critical for California being the diverse state it wants to be, to have the information to make the difference in the lives of our young people, but in the lives of all of us. And it's only for that reason that I respectfully ask for an aye vote, that you'd have the courage to join me and not listen to the narrative that I have listened to for 50 years in terms of what the university can and cannot do, because I know they do what they want to do when they want to do it, regardless of who is in charge, who has the role to do it, who has the right to do it, all those kinds of things. I have been a part of that forever. I know the narrative, I know the language, and thank God I'm here to tell you that it's all unfair, unfounded, and if I believed in the Easter Bunny, then I would believe in that. So once again, I ask for you to vote for this bill, for AB 1460, for us to do something different and to challenge the system as it should be.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. Okay. So none of us ever want to follow Dr. Weber, but before we vote, I do just want to express my opinion on the bill. And I do have to say to the CSUs, I think you guys could have come a little bit more prepared. It's really clear that this is something that the Academic Senate has recommended, that the task force has recommended, that it hasn't been instituted as we've gone over in 3 years. We've heard people talk about this being a precedent, and it's never happened. And I would just say that never happens until it does happen. And sometimes we have to change the status quo. And as I said with Assemblymember Medina's bill, how do we expect, and as you articulated very well, Dr. Weber, how do we expect people to know about each other if we don't give them the opportunity to learn about each other? How do we expect to break down walls, break down barriers, accept each other, love each other, if we don't teach our young people? So I am very happy to support the bill today. I appreciate you also being an advocate and working so hard and tirelessly on this for all the years that you've been doing it. And I just think that we need to change. And if we don't change things for our young people, then how can we ever expect a better future? So I thank you very much. The more we know about each other, the more we will know that we are more alike than different. And I would say to all of my colleagues, if not us, then who? And if not when? Well, if not now, then when? We have a motion by Senator Durazo. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Item 12, AB 1460. The motion is due pass to appropriations. Leyva?
Aye.
Leyva, aye. Wilk? Chang? Durazo?
Aye.
Durazo, aye. Glazer? McGuire? Pan?
We will leave that bill on call. Thank you very much, Dr. Weber. All right, members, we are moving on to file item 11, Assemblymember Gibson. This is this is AB 1354. Begin when you're ready, but if you want to wait for the room to clear a little bit.